So that certainly was quick. Last week, I was talking in an episode about the end of cheap tokens, where I broke down the economics of how these AI companies make or lose money and the role of training versus inference and why they're incentivized to move away from these subsidized subscriptions now that we have these agentic long running tasks that consume a lot of tokens. And today I woke up, or actually I got it yesterday evening, I got an email by GitHub that they are announcing that all GitHub Copilot plans, so individual and business and enterprise, will transition to usage-based billing on June 1st. And I find their system really weird, but I'll get back to that. But it is no surprise, of course. As mentioned, I broke it down in that separate episode. And yeah, for these companies, these subscription offerings they have are just not viable for these agentic tasks. And I'll also get back to why GitHub moved first here and why I think that, for example, OpenAI and also probably Anthropic will wait a bit longer until they move away from the subscription offerings. At some point for the agentic coding, I'm pretty sure they will all move to usage-based pricing though. But let's stick to GitHub. Now, what changes here with GitHub Copilot is that, as they mentioned in this blog post, as I mentioned in that last episode, we now have these long-running, these multi-hour autonomous coding sessions that burn a lot of tokens, and well, that's just not viable anymore for them. GitHub has absorbed much of the escalating inference cost behind that usage, but the current premium request model is no longer sustainable for them. That's the reason why they're moving away from the subscription offering. And what's changing is that now in the future, you can still have a subscription. And if you have one, it will not be canceled for you. But instead of getting some guaranteed amount of usage out of it, you'll get AI credits. And what you'll get is, for now, if you have a business plan, and also actually if you have an individual plan, you'll get $10 of credits for your $10 per month plan and $39 for the $39 per month plan. For businesses, it's the same, but they're during a transition period, which goes to the end of August, you will actually get $30 and $70 in monthly credits, clearly with the goal of ensuring that less business customers are canceling their subscriptions. But of course, once that transition period here is over, as a business customer, you will also just get a one-to-one match, so to say. So you spend $19 per month for your subscription, you get $19 in monthly AI credits. And therefore, in the end, unless I'm getting something totally wrong here, this is really just a prepayment. So I don't see why you would choose that over just paying for the actual use instead of having a subscription. Because of course, with this model, the disadvantage is that if you for some reason don't use up your usage, you burn some money, but you don't really get an advantage out of having the subscription unless the models you can use through the subscription are priced cheaper than if you're directly using them through an API key, of course. Now, we can take a look at their pricing page here, and there we see the prices we pay for these different models. And in the end, that is what we'll be paying and what will be deducted from our AI credits once we are in that usage-based pricing plan. Here we see that one AI credit is $1 and you get 1,900 credits for the business plan. That's the $19 per month plan, and 3,900 for the more expensive $39 plan. So that in the end comes out to these amounts I mentioned here. And then we have this pricing table, and from everything I see here, from everything I could find here, that is exactly, well, that there is no advantage here. There is no discount here. If you have a subscription. So if we take a look at the price here, for example, for GPT 5.5, $5 per million input tokens and $30 per million output tokens, well, that is exactly the same what we're paying in the end if we're using the model directly through the OpenAI API. So if we would bring our own API key in the end, right? So that's what I mean. I don't see where exactly we would have an advantage here from using that subscription, at least when it comes to these OpenAI models. But it's the same, of course, for the Claude models. If I go to the Claude API docs, I can see that for Opus 4.7, for input tokens, I am paying $5 per million. And for output, I'm at 25. And again, if I go back to the GitHub Copilot pricing page here, that is $5 input, 25 per output. So again, I don't see which advantage this subscription has. I can instead just go directly for usage-based pricing by bringing my own API key, for example, and then I have more flexibility. And if I'm using less tokens, I'm at least not charged these $19 or $39 per month. But maybe I'm also getting something totally wrong here. And for businesses, of course, there may be different incentives here to use such subscriptions over usage-based pricing. Because, of course, one advantage you could see here is that if you go for these subscriptions, by default, if you exceed or if you reach the limit of your subscription, so if you use up all the credits you have in that subscription, you can't continue using GitHub Copilot. And of course, from a company perspective, that may be what you want, so that you give your employees these subscriptions here. And if they're out of credits, they're out of credits, and they have to go back to writing code like a caveman by hand. So I guess that could be one advantage here, versus if you bring your own API key, there is unlimited use, which of course is not entirely true. You can limit usage per API key to in the dashboards, in the settings of these API providers, of these AI providers. But yeah, that is the offering we have here. A bit weird, but as I mentioned, not surprising at all, because it's all not sustainable, at least for now, for GitHub Copilot, so for Microsoft in the end. And I don't think that OpenAI will change its subscription pricing or how it works in the very near future, at least. They will certainly change it at some point, and so will Anthropic, and I mentioned that in the other episode, but not right now, I think, because OpenAI just missed their revenue targets, and that's an article from today too, and that is a statement by their CFO. And this is important. In that statement, the CFO said that she's worried the company might not be able to pay for future computing contracts if revenue doesn't grow fast enough. Now, why does this mean that they will keep on subsidizing subscriptions? Well, they definitely still want to gain market share. Obviously, at some point, they will need to cut their losses. But of course, for one, if they can achieve that with their subscriptions, they're at least break even or not losing too much money, they can grow their market share through those subscription offerings. And then, of course, once they do switch to a usage-based pricing, they can probably turn a profit there, at least on the individual level per user. And that, of course, could then fund future investments. The problem OpenAI, of course, has is that everybody knows ChatGPT, everybody's using ChatGPT, but 90-ish% of all the users are not paying for it. They're using the free version. And of course, well, no surprise, that isn't making any money for OpenAI. And then, of course, you have all these subscribers that are using their subscription for Codex, so for agentic coding, and those subscribers are not super profitable. That is the situation in which OpenAI finds itself. But still, as mentioned, they need to grow their market share so that eventually they can make changes to the pricing, get rid of subscriptions or make them more expensive or whatever, limit the usage, so that they can turn a profit per user and then fund future investments. And therefore, I think that right now, where they are still desperate to grow their revenue For now, it's the revenue focus because that equals market share in the end. So now where they're desperate to grow their visibility, their market share, the amount of paying users, I don't think they will make any changes to their Codex subscription plan offerings anytime soon, or for now at least. And for the same reason, I think Anthropic may not be making drastic changes. I do very well see that Anthropic may remove the more expensive models, Opus models, from the base subscription plans, but will keep it in the more expensive plans, because the way the limits in those Claude subscription plans work, they're already pretty restrictive, not as bad in my experience as some people make it seem on X, but definitely more restrictive than the OpenAI usage limits in the Codex subscriptions. So Anthropic may not be losing as much money on these subscriptions. And of course, I'm pretty sure they don't want to give up market share and give that to OpenAI. Of course, they're fierce competitors. The advantage, and I already mentioned that in the other episode too, of course, is that Anthropic is very well positioned in the enterprise market. So yeah, they can at some point, and probably before OpenAI does it, switch to a more aggressive pricing model, potentially to usage-based pricing model, just like GitHub Copilot did here, so that they can also turn some profit, make some profit out of these users, and then fund future investments. Now, for GitHub and therefore Microsoft in the end, things are a bit different in my opinion, because of course, whilst they certainly still also want to gain market share, it's probably not the number one priority for them, because Microsoft is already shoving their Copilot offerings, is sharing it with everybody and is pushing it into all companies and into all their products. And of course, therefore, naturally, because so many companies are using Microsoft products and are also using VS Code or just Visual Studio, so naturally, GitHub Copilot will be used by a decent amount of companies if they want, or if their users, their employees want it or not. So market share is probably not their number one priority. And of course, therefore, they are definitely not interested in burning money long term. They especially don't need to just gain market share to eventually become profitable, because they have no training to be funded, right? They just need a profitable user base, and as mentioned, market share kind of comes on its own from a Microsoft perspective, because Copilot is everywhere and they have these deep roots in all these companies. So that's why I think they are now more interested in cutting their losses and already starting to turn a profit per user, or at least not lose money. I think that is their goal here. And therefore, yeah, GitHub Copilot was the first one to move to usage-based pricing. Definitely won't be the last one, but I think for the reasons mentioned, Codex or OpenAI and Anthropic will probably not move to usage-based pricing just now. Anthropic maybe, but OpenAI, I really don't see that happening in the very near future.